Hey everyone, I hope that you're having a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I actually released a course on Patreon. It's a 20 video series that's all into one very, very long video, an hour and a half of content, but very fast and efficient. That's the thing that I guess, most to do, or that I'm the most passionate about doing. I really love the idea of learning things online, and I love the concept of Creative Live and different seminar style programs like that. But my issue is that I don't really want to sit through 8 hours of content when everything could be summarized into 45 minutes. So that is what I do my best to do, and that's what my Patreon channel essentially is. So it's always the fastest and most efficient way I can teach something. I'm not going to just go into just random stories that take 15 minutes to just fill time like I'm doing right now. So if you're interested in that, basically what that course does is it goes through all, I would say 16 different ways that if I was getting into photography right now that I would be looking at. So I'd be looking at all those different avenues as sustainable career options. What I'm going to talk about today is a little bit more high level, I guess. And it is pretty much what at least my mindset would be going into becoming a professional photographer. So there are, I guess, two very specific avenues, I think, as far as things that are just working right now. And I do believe that, so it's very widely known that photography, and wedding photography specifically, is an incredibly oversaturated market. And you might think that that is a negative, but I personally believe that it is a positive, because essentially what is happening is that there's so many photographers already in the space that they've built the market for you. So now you just find your slice within that market. Whereas if you were somebody that you were coming into a brand new style of photography, you would have to educate every single person in the world in order for those few early adopters to hire you. So wedding photography is already highly valued. And while it is competitive and a little bit oversaturated, I feel like there is space if you are hungry and you have a very clear vision of what you want to do and also who your clients are. And I think that comes down to any style of photography that you do. You have to go into it knowing who your client is. That if you want to shoot kitchens, you can't just go in and be like, I want to shoot kitchens. You have to go in and know the specific type of kitchens that you want to be shooting so you can build your portfolio around that. I think by building your portfolio first and really focusing hard and curating on what that looks like, I think that is how you create a career in future life happiness as far as photography goes. And also, so I guess there's, to backtrack a little bit here, kind of start with your end goal as well. That if you want to be somebody that's published in magazines, or you want to be somebody that's being flown around the world, you have to get very good at a very specific genre of photography. That there are very few people that nobody's going to fly me out to Los Angeles to photograph a house. I'm not a real estate photographer. I'm by far not the best real estate photographer in the world. Have I done it a little bit? Yes. Do I post about it online? No, not currently, because I'm focused on what I'm doing, which is travel and wedding photography. Once you do start to see a little bit of success, I think that you can do, I think travel is kind of the evergreen style of photography, that even if you are doing a different type of photography and you are a personal brand, that you're still able to post travel content into that. And if anything, I feel like it kind of almost helps increase your credibility a little bit. I've talked about this in past videos on YouTube, that the easiest life hack to people seeing you as a fantastic professional photographer is you just going and doing a travel gig somewhere. That you can set that up, you can hire the models, you can do whatever you need to do in order to get that shoot in that far off, unique place that nobody else in your city has. And as soon as you do that, people will be like, wow, did you see that this guy did a shoot in Santa Monica, I don't know, Pacific Park, I guess, for lack of a better thing happening in Santa Monica right now. But if you go out and you do something like that, you bring all of that credibility back. And I think that does a lot of good things for your career at home. The other thing that, by doing travel inspired shoots, whatever you're kind of interested in focusing on, that if you go out and you do those shoots, that it is a lot more attainable for somebody specifically me in the wedding market. That I did my first travel engagement session, and then I booked about 4 or 5 more the following year, because couples were like, oh, we can do this. So the way that I work those sessions is that if our dates kind of collide or near collide in a specific place, I will just transfer the shoot that I would have done for them here over to wherever we are in the world. And I will go out of my way a little bit or sometimes a lot if it's a great opportunity to do an engagement session on site. For instance, one of my favorite images, like my favorite shoot I think that I've ever done, was a shoot in Iceland. And that was essentially a shoot that I just happened to be in Iceland for, that I decided that like, hey, if I can shift my dates by a week, I can actually do this shoot in Iceland rather than back at home here. So we decided to do that, and we chased the midnight sun. It sounds so romantic. And we ended up behind one of the biggest waterfalls there immediately as the sun was kind of like going down, and we were racing to get to the sun, or to get the sunset in the shot. And then we realized that the sun doesn't actually set on the summer solstice, that it just like kind of hits the horizon and it just hangs out there. So we had a little bit extra time. But because of that shoot, I have booked a lot more work. So I'm totally happy to pay my way to get into that. I think there's a big stigma surrounding like not paying your way, especially like not specifically about how to get into photography, but like paying for marketing and paying like ad dollars to Facebook or Instagram or whatever. There's a huge stigma that like, oh, my business has to grow organically, or because I'm that amazing. And I feel like that's just a lot of entitlement that I don't think that anyone should have, that or maybe some people should. Maybe that's they stay out of that space, they keep the cost of it down. But I think that like if you go into it with the mindset that you are happy to pay, especially for underpriced attention in Facebook and Instagram, like 100% look into advertising on those two platforms, because not only will they book you direct leads, but they will also increase your vanity metrics on that platform as well, and you'll have new followers and new people to interact with your content to make you look even more credible than you currently are. And once you have a significant following, you stop getting a lot of the questions that you got in early meetings about like basically them wondering if you are going to exist as a photographer in a year, that they know that you have this credibility, that you're traveling, that you're doing work constantly, that you're showing that work, that people have a lot more faith in that. I think another thing that helps get people into photography early on is figuring out, one, what you're good at, and two, what kind of cool factor you can put into it. And that might sound a little cheesy and lame, but I think by being kind of the youngest wedding photographer in my local market when I was first getting started, I had a little bit of cool factor that nobody else had. Even though I was not a cool person, I was very quiet and reserved and shy, and I found it very difficult to actually communicate with my clients, because my clients when I was first getting started were like 6 or 7 years older than I was. And when you're like 18, 19, photographing like 26, 27-year-olds wedding, it's quite like a reverse age gap that takes a little bit of time to get used to. So by being able to like be the younger guy, it seemed like I basically, by being young, I wasn't going to be the guy that like set up a tripod and made you pose while you were like signing the register or whatever. That I was a little bit more like, my background was concert photography, so I decided that like I was going to photograph everything like it was a concert, and that was going to be like my spin that I put on it, that I wasn't a wedding photographer, that I'm a concert photographer that also shoots weddings. And that worked out for a little bit. I feel like it's a little, I don't know if I just maybe I personally beat it to death in my mind. Maybe it's still a valid thing to be doing, but I think that mindset, and the mindset of it not being a wedding, that it being a live event with a lot of emotion, a lot of movement, a lot of different lighting, and coming into it with that mindset, I think that set me apart. And also being younger kind of really accentuated that. I think that also by when my wife Lindsay was getting into wedding photography, it was around the time that all of her friends started to get married as well. So that was very, I don't know if that was a cool factor, but she was popular enough, I guess, amongst her friends. And when one of her friends was a bridesmaid, she would usually get hired for that wedding. If one of her friends was getting married, she would usually get hired for that wedding. So as well as cool factor, also just kind of like, if you have a unique moment in time in your life right now and you can capitalize on that, definitely don't be ashamed to do that. Don't wait until you're 35 to start a career that you wish that you would have started when you were 25. I think that is another a huge point, that when I worked at Outback Steakhouse for 8 years, and it was a magical time indeed. And the thing that I liked the most about Outback was the fact that my schedule was completely customizable. So I worked a few summers in an actual office job, and I really found myself feeling crazy constricted by having to be on site from like 9 to 5 or 9 to 3 or whatever my, I think it was like 10 to 2 flex hours or whatever. And by having to be there, it was really starting to take away the money that I should have been making for my business. And while I was getting a paycheck, and there is a balance to strike in there, but while I was getting a paycheck, I for sure wasn't really adding to the long-term or the big picture, long game view of my life, that if I could have invested those like 2 summers of time into my photography career, I felt like I would have been so much farther ahead than I'm currently. And that also goes back to very, very much like I would say the last year of high school, first year of college, I realized that like this is what I wanted to be doing, that I wanted to be doing photography. But I happened to be in school for computer programming / analyst. And because of pressures from my parents and just society in general, I was 100% like, I have to finish this program. And then because I graduated and finished a program that I knew that I did not want to do, I went back to school for another year in advertising, because I was like, well, I certainly don't want to do computer programming. How about advertising? That sounds fun. And I was very much picking these like direct career paths. It's like, okay, you go to school for advertising, you get a job at a marketing agency, you try to go to like, I don't know, what's the pinnacle of that, like Madison Avenue or whatever. You're picking like a very specific career path like that. Whereas before, if somebody just would have been like, yeah, you can just be a photographer and you can live a very great life with lots of time and physical freedom. And if somebody would have told me that, I was not able to, or not fortunate enough to organically discover that that is an option, that you can do that. So if you're in a position right now that you're maybe going to school for something that you don't love, and you know for sure 100% that you love photography, school is always going to be there. Your full-time job, you can always get another full-time job. What you can't do is I can't go back to like the time that I chose to go into a school program that I knew I was not going to be finishing, or that I knew that I was not going to be doing something with when I finished, which is essentially the equivalent of not finishing, I would say. If you can go back and get that time back, like that would have been 4 years of hard work that I would have been putting into my career, and maybe I wouldn't have ended up in the same space in photography. Like when you're that young and that hungry and able to work so much, the other benefit is that like you can live off no money. And that is something that I was fortunate enough, as I was kind of coming out of college, I was used to living on no money. So it was very easy for me to be like, okay, this Outback Steakhouse money goes to sustain my life. Any money that I make in photography goes into cameras and lenses. And the course that's on Patreon actually goes a little bit more into depth of how I kind of bridged that gap through different styles of photography in the beginning. So if you're interested in that, patreon.com/Taylor Jackson, sort of submit an advertisement in the center of this podcast. So overall, the guidance that I would give to you or anyone that would want to get into photography, it is figure out, or want to become a full-time photographer, it is to figure out what you want to do within reason. Obviously, you're going to kind of bounce around within the guidelines of kind of where you're going. But I would say to figure out what you want to do and start building that portfolio right now. Like, don't wait for it to come to you. If it's an expensive portfolio to build, I think wedding photography is a pretty expensive-ish portfolio to build, because you have to hire models, you have to hire makeup artists to find dresses. It's a little resource intensive to find like people to collaborate with, because when you're young and untested, it's very actually hard to network with people, I find. And so by finding those few shoots and starting to piece together that life, that is how you create a portfolio that's going to book you more and more work. So the investment and the time investment into building a portfolio, I would say, is the equivalent of, if like whatever money you'd be putting into school, just put it into building your portfolio. As I talked about in the first episode, that I went to my quote unquote film school by just like doing a project and just like sink or swim, like figure this out. You have YouTube, you have the internet, you have all the information that you could ever possibly need to learn. So just begin with the skills needed. Learn the business skills too, especially if you're somebody that maybe you don't quite get the business end as much as you get the photography end. I find that I'm kind of the opposite, that I was a very good marketer, that I was very good at running a business, and from a very early age I knew that that's what I wanted to be doing. And it just took me until I found photography to realize that that was the piece that kind of completed that okay, so my business will be photography. And I think that if you're fortunate enough to be in that mindset, it makes the transition a lot easier. I think it's very hard if you're a very pure artist and you're not able to kind of, or it feels a little forced to do the business side of things, it might be interesting to look for a partner in your business, your photography business, then if that is the case, somebody that can actually handle the business end and it feel comfortable and natural. But that is totally up to you. There's no rules in this photography career game. Just create work that people like and have fun doing it. Be a good person overall. Always do the right thing and just start building your portfolio today. Those are my guidelines to success in photography in 2018. So thanks for listening today. I am Taylor Jackson. Head over to Patreon if you have any questions. If you want me to answer any questions on this podcast, I am happy to do so. There's a link in the top of the Patreon area that will direct you to where you can plug in a question, and you don't have to be a member of the Patreon. I would love for you to be, but if you're not a member of the Patreon, you can still ask a question. I'll still do my best to get it to you. So yeah, thanks so much for listening today, and I will see you on another time. Man, I've really gotten good. The entire thing to the end, the ending. Need to figure out how to wrap these up better. See you another time. Peace, love, and all-wheel drive Hondas. Now I'm just looking at stuff. See you another time.